Hello everyone, welcome to Mindspeak on Herald Global. I am Saimik Sen and joining us today the legendary Indian classical dancer, choreographer and actress. She is also a Padma Bhushan, Srimati Mallika Sarabhai. Welcome to Herald Global and thank you so much for taking out this time for us. So let me begin by asking you, how do you deal with the pandemic personally and professionally?
It's been a rough time because I've lost a lot of friends and a lot of colleagues. And especially in the second wave, it was like a daily loss. And since then, I have lost people very, very dear to me, not from the pandemic, but from various other things. So it's been like a 16 months of loss. On the other hand, we've been able to completely go online with classes, though not with performances yet. So that has been an interesting learning experience.
According to you, did the performing arts industry got affected because of the pandemic?
Oh, hugely so, hugely so. And it's not only the performing arts. I mean, you see just the front end of a performing art. So if I am performing, you think, has Mallika been affected? But what Mallika wears, who does her hair, who does her gungrus, who is the person who makes the mridangam, who plays the mridangam, what are the various industries that go into mridangam making, into the tanpura, into the weaving industry, therefore the Tamilian worker who is doing the brocade saris, and so on and so forth. And all of them are out of work. All of them.
Yeah,
In any case, even before the pandemic, as far as the music industry is concerned, they were facing grave dangers from technology because there are now samplers available for most Indian instruments, and many new age composers prefer working with samplers than working with real musicians. So they were under siege in any case.
Sure. What change have you brought about as you move towards digitalization?
Well, visually, in Darpana, we have been trying to create a completely new language that takes the advantage of real performances, not documented performances, but real performances, which are recreated or created for the digital medium, which means that one is creating things, taking the advantages of the digital museum and the limitations of a live theatre and mixing the two.
How did your interest in Bharatanatyam and Kuchipudi take its roots?
Well, that's pretty obvious, isn't it? I was brought up with Bharatanatyam, Kuchipudi, Kathakali dancers all around me. So it was drilled into me whether I wanted to do it or not. It was drilled into me. And as a matter of fact, I fought it till I was about 22 years old. I learned all of it, but I fought it saying this is the only thing I don't want to do because it's too much hard work.
At the age of 18, you won most of your first awards. So how did you feel about that? At that early age, you won so many awards.
You know, I belong to a household where any public accolade used to be like, this is for the rest of you. So if Papa won an award, if Amma won an award, it was always to reiterate their love and commitment to the family. So it was never a question of, I need to be as good as. I remember when I first started dancing, my concern, professionally dancing, my concern was, oh God, I hope I don't ruin my mother's name because she's worked so hard for it. I hope people don't say, oh, look what Mrinalini produced. So that was really, it was not that I have to be as good as Amma, but that is, I mustn't ruin her name. And it's interesting because one of my favorite reviews even today, and this was a review from my first tour in 1977 when I was dancing at the Teatro Olimpico in Rome, and a reviewer, a serious dance reviewer who had reviewed my mother 11 years earlier, wrote a review saying that when you see Mrinalini Sarabhai dance, you think of Shiva, ascetic, otherworldly, inside of herself. And when you see Mallika dance, you can see it's the same strain, but you think of Krishna, very playful, very bouncy, very energetic. And I think that in many ways, this is just such a summation of what Amma and I used to be then. I think I've changed a lot, but at that age, I think that was an amazing summation coming from somebody who was not Indian and coming from somebody who obviously had a deep insight into India.
How did you create your contemporary dance form?
You know, I have been somebody who, without naming it as an activist, uh, came from a family where we spoke up about injustice, whether it was seeing somebody beating up somebody else on the street, or whether it was something that happened in school or with ourselves or with anybody around. We just spoke up, and I thought that was the way things were. But I never thought that I was the kind of artist who could use the arts as a language to talk about what later got called activism. So when I was chosen for the Mahabharata by Peter Brook to go and work with him initially for 2 years, but then it turned out to be 5, I went in as a Bharatanatyam Kuchipudi dancer who was much acclaimed, and somebody who thought her voice needed to be used for speaking for the voiceless. Seeing the effect that Draupadi had on audiences across the world, how many people who officially said they didn't believe in feminism came up to me and said, that's the kind of woman we'd like to be, a woman who knows her mind and isn't negating her femininity in order to be strong. And when I came out of the Mahabharata in late 89, I thought I have with me languages that are more potent for change than lecturing or arguing. And I must use them, and I must use them correctly. And that is how I went into creating my first performance piece. It wasn't even a dance piece alone, which is Shakti, the Power of Women. And my work has continued in that field. As far as the dance vocabulary of contemporary dance is concerned, that I work with, I have never trained in Western dance. So the question of copying the West didn't fall with me. But I also think that the vocabulary of Indian dance lends itself to being as contemporary as one wants. My issue has always been with saying that this is the tradition I have learned, and this is how I am changing it. And I am changing it with the full knowledge of the style. I am not changing it because I can't be bothered to learn the style. And I think I find this is valid of all art forms, of everything. Unless I have learned chemistry, do I have the freedom of mixing anything with anything and maybe blowing something up? I don't think so. Similarly, with writing, people who mispronounce or misspell need to be doing it from a place where their grammar is impeccable. I think that is what gives you the permission to expand a language rather than to tinker with it. And I think that's where my work comes from. It basically is the roots come from Bharatanatyam, the alphabet comes from Bharatanatyam, but both the subject matter and the form take on a difference. But I can still do a completely classical performance in either Bharatanatyam or Kuchipudi. And I think that is the position of strength that I speak from.
True, true. How do you think the art helps apart from being a medium of expression?
It's like asking, how do you think blood is useful for the body besides carrying oxygen around it? I think art is what makes us a species that can feel, a species that can empathize, a species that can sympathize, a species that should take the time to enjoy the fragrance of a flower. You know, the single most viewed TED talk is by a Britisher, and the title is Do Schools Kill Creativity? And it is all about the essential nature of the learning of the creative arts in order to make us better at everything, whether it is better students of math or better science students or better human beings. And I think that a lot of the angst that we are seeing, a lot of the emptiness in human beings is because our educational system over the last 40, 50 years has made arts into an extracurricular and completely expendable entity. Do you remember that visual early on in the first COVID wave of an entire area of Italy that was locked down and everybody coming onto their balconies and singing together?
Yes, definitely.
That was
I remember.
humanity. That is humanity. That is what connects heart from heart. We are running an interesting project just now called Nritya Parichay.
Okay.
It's called Nritya Parichay for only because it uses the language of folk art to liberate people from physical and mental stress. We used to run it in 2019 in municipal schools in Ahmedabad, where we used to do it face to face. And then for the entire year, we've been thinking that, you are hearing of more and more mental issues amongst people who have gone through this. You're hearing of more and more obesity. You're thinking of more and more lung issues and breathing issues. And all of these can be sorted by actually getting up and dancing. And dancing also frees those chemicals that give you a feeling of well-being, that give you the oxytocins and all of those, the serotonin and all the things that make you feel a sense of well-being. So for the last 3 months, we have now started online courses. We are developing material that we can put for free availability on the Darpana YouTube channel so that anybody, including you, can just switch on to it and learn a folk dance, learn about another culture in India, learn about where they come from, what is their context, and just shake a leg and feel good.
Sure.
So that is the importance of the arts, I think.
That's very interesting. What is the differentiating factor between performing in front of an international audience and then, say, in India?
I would make a further distinction between which kind of international audience and which kind of Indian audience. In most developed societies, theater and dance run in theaters where people buy tickets and go to see them. In India, for dance especially, you either have to be invited, or you are dancing at a conference, or you are dancing because somebody is launching something. There is no such thing as a theater which a dancer or a dance company can take and hope to sell tickets to get a full audience. We have a venue in Darpana called Natarani, which has now been running for 27 years. And a few years ago, to celebrate 600 years of Ahmedabad's birth, we created a total theater experience called Kadak Badshai. Kadak because the founder of Ahmedabad, Ahmed Shah, was considered a very Kadak Raja, and Badshai because his favorite brew was called Kadak Badshai. And it's a typical brew. This was before the Chinese sent tea to India, so at that time it didn't have tea. Today, if you go to a dhaba and you say, I want a Kadak Badshai, they will give you a tea which will make you awake for the next 24 hours. And we as young students used to drink it all the time. But for the first time in the history of theater anywhere, I think in India, we ran for 55 days, full houses with zero sponsorships, with people actually queuing for half a kilometer and waiting to buy tickets. This has never happened. Now, this was not a dance performance. It had lots of dance in it, but it was not a dance performance. Otherwise, theater and dance practitioners will tell you that without sponsorship, without support, things are not possible. Now, this is not true in the West. So the first difference that I will tell you amongst the audiences is that audiences in the West are willing to buy tickets to dance. In this country, it's rare and it's very, very, very small. That's the first difference. Second is, and this is an experience of my first tour, I was in Paris performing every night at the Festival de Champs-Élysées, every single night. That's where my first award comes from as well. And I saw that by the fifth night, there was a repeat audience. And I would have people coming to me at the end of the show and saying that when we saw you a few days ago, for Krishna, you did this mudra, but in today's show, you did this mudra. So what is the difference? Now, I have never had an audience like this in India, frankly. I have never had an audience who studies it so much, who studies your performance so much that they will come back, having read about the Gita Govinda, whatever it is you are performing, and having the acuity to actually question you on something like this. I miss it.
What do you feel is the role of the society when it comes to encouraging women in terms of what they want to pursue, their choices?
By not treating women as human beings, this society has come to its knees. What we consider civilization today is a patriarchal civilization, and it has led to more wars being fought today than ever in history, more migrants fleeing either horrible regimes or climate change or other reasons, more unhappiness, more suicides, more people dying of curable diseases, more famines, and more rape, violence, and pillage. This is a male society built on male values, built on a sense of victory as being the equal of well-being. Wherever women have taken over, and this includes from successful women panchayats to corporations, where even the Harvard Business Review said that if there are more than 3 women on the governing board of a company, the company becomes not only more profitable, but more humane. I'm not saying women, I'm saying all those characteristics that men consider weakness and that are attributed to women. Those are the characteristics we need today. A mother won't see that she eats till she has fed every single child. And if there's a sick and weak child, that child is likely to get the first attention. How many governments do we have who think of the last person's tears first? We don't. They don't. They think of their own elections, they think of their own families, they think of their own bank balances, and making enough money, trampling over other people as their first priority. This is true of predatory companies. This is true of predatory governments. This is true of predatory heads of families. If we accept that we have considered as weakness many traits that are required today to be able to live on an earth which does not give us COVID every month, to live on an earth which does not bring floods to a German city and 50-degree temperatures to Canada, then we need to rethink what we have considered male and female traits, throw away what we consider conquest, and bring in those traits without gendering them, without saying why women and why men. Let's forget that. And let's say, what is the best for all of us? Because we can no longer be alive at the cost of somebody else, because that is going to come and bite you. You cannot have clean air in one place and polluted air. You cannot have clean water in one place and polluted water in another. It's just not possible today. And COVID has made us learn that lesson, if we learn that lesson. So I will say to you, we have to have a system that takes everybody along, man, woman, child, healthy, unhealthy, rich and poor. And we need to change all our lenses to become that society if we want to survive.
Do you think the education system in India is doing enough for space research and awareness?
Our schools killing creativity. Our schools, to the best part, are making us into mandabuddhis who are no good as human beings, who are not particularly good as particular careers either. And we are becoming non-humane beings. So no, the educational system isn't working, but piecemeal efforts will not yield results. The kind of things that we are doing, the new educational system, the rewriting of history, the erasing of such important sections of our history, whether you like them or not, the erasing of entire eras in our history because we think that we are the victims. none of this is actually going towards the betterment of human beings. None of it is going to make us into more humane beings, the two things that are required today to survive.
It's been almost 1 year, 8 months, like from when the time the pandemic has hit. So do you think the government has failed somewhere?
Failed, of course it's failed.
Yeah.
Hugely on so many fronts. The government has used the pandemic to put people into jail who ask questions, to bring in laws that are destroying our environment, to push in people who should not be pushed in, to give liberal allowances to industries which are polluting and killing the earth, to completely destroy the judiciary, and to make us into a country of such frightened people that we don't dare ask questions. Look at the status of the press. Today we have been named as one of the least free presses by a world agency. When a world agency pats us on the back, then we are very gung-ho. Listen, the whole world is saying this is the best, India is the best, this is the best. When a world agency actually criticizes you, we say, oh, this is a conspiracy. We are not this and this. I mean, look at what's happening with the Pegasus. Where has this government ever stood up and spoken the truth transparently? How can we be a government that never allows the press to question it, but makes the press into what is called Godi media? Because we feed them, because we hold the huge financial currency, that we will not give you the million ads that we give you, and without those million ads your newspaper or your television channel is going to fold. I mean, there is a direct connection there. Today this government is no longer pretending to be anything but what it is. So yes, it's failed miserably. Just by saying a million lies doesn't make anything okay. People might believe you, people might still vote for you, but it doesn't make you asatyameva jayate is the motto.
So my last question to you, okay, in this volatile condition over it's almost 2 years. So what is your suggestion for the people, the aspiring performing artists, how they should cope up with the entire situation?
Before I even come to performing artists, I'll tell you what my request is to the people of this country. That just by being in an election and voting every 5 years does not make you a democratic citizen. A democratic citizens need to act every day, which means that you need to know who your municipal councillor is, who your MLA is, who your MP is, and you need to be forcing them to be transparent, delivering what they're supposed to be delivering. If you have voted for somebody and that person jumps ship and goes to the opposite party, demand that they resign. Ask it. You cannot live in a democracy when you are asleep and when you are so bogged down by your daily life that you cannot make a democracy work. One of the basic ways in which governments keep us asleep is by making us so frustrated with daily living, so hungry because we can't send our kids to school, because we can't get enough food. Therefore, who has the energy to fight? But there is a huge middle class in this country who is not in that situation, who are educated, but if you ask them who their MLA is, they won't know. If you ask them who their municipal council is, they won't know. That's my first advice. Second, to performing artists, even without the pandemic, you could hardly make a living as a performing artist unless you were one of the chosen 100. So decide on what you want. Have a second way in which at least you can fulfill your obligations to yourself and your family. You have enough to eat, you have enough to live, so that you're not constantly worthy. Because unless there is a huge change in our country, the arts will always be at the dumping end and will never receive anything. Even at the best of times, it has not been a good scene. So have absolutely no optimism about making a living from the performing arts. You can teach performing arts, that will make you a living. You can do other things with the performing arts, that will make you a living. But performing alone, not earlier, not today, not in the near future. But if you love it, as I do, we'll find a way.
Thank you so much for taking out this time, and it was a pleasure interacting with you.